I want to talk about Andrei Kuzmenko a little bit because ties Pavel Bure's record last night for most goals by a Russian-born Canuck in his first season with the club. Look, this guy's production, we were waiting for it to fall off a little bit. We saw the high shooting percentage, and I think that's why we were both pretty critical of handing out an extension. Granted, we also thought the team should rebuild and all that sort of stuff. There was other things in it, but I will say myself, like I'm not going to speak for you, but I think I might have been wrong about that one, about the whole trade Kuzmenko. If you're not going to rebuild, and clearly this team isn't going to, if you're not going to rebuild, you have to you have to keep a guy like that, right? Like if you trust your pro scouting enough and you trust what you're seeing on the ice enough, which the Canucks obviously did with Kuzmenko, you have to give out that extension. And like, look, if he keeps this up over a full 82 game season, and it looks like he's going into next year as well, like his value is going to be even higher. Like we talked about how, he's such a unicorn, like teams are going to be able to add him for such a low cap hit. Look, a guy who's consistently going to score 40 goals in the league, if he reaches that this year, and he's on that pace next year at next year's deadline, if you want to, you get a king's ransom for a guy scoring 40 goals that's on $5.5 million. Of course, the Canucks would be hoping that at that point they're able to make the playoffs off of that kind of production from one of their forwards, let alone at least two or three. But my point here is that his value is absolutely going to be higher next year if he keeps this up. And he's not showing any signs of stopping.
Is it though? Like,
absolutely.
I don't think so. Listen, how many? So out of the top 50 goal scorers in the NHL, Kuzmenko's the only guy who is above 22% shooting. He's at 27%, right? Like that's not sustainable. He's 27.9% shooting percentage.
You've been saying that all year, though. That's the point. You've been saying that all year,
right? And you can have a year where you're in the high 20s, but there's a reason why Jack Hughes has a 13% shooting percentage this year, right? Like there's like Alexander Ovechkin, 14%. Like these players aren't going to live at 28% all season long. Kuzmenko's not going to have an NHL career where he shoots at 28%. And I think he's been excellent. I think he does a lot of really good things right to have that shooting percentage be boosted. Like those tap-ins from behind the net. Listen, that's gonna augment to your shooting percentage a ton throughout the season. But I don't know. I think he's been really good. I think he's really smart. But there's going to be teams that know what he's about in his second year. They're going to kind of really key in on those things. I think there's going to be a learning process around it. I hope that his learning process of the game is even at a higher level, because then, maybe he'll even be more successful. But we've seen this with rookies a lot, and I know that he's not technically a rookie. He's a first-year player. But, man, the 28% shooting percentage, I don't know. I don't think that's going to be something we see over his next 2 years of his contract.
So if a 28 shooting percentage brings him to 40 goals, okay? Let's say he drops down to 22 or he drops down to 19, whatever, and he puts in 30 or whatever. He takes more shots. I'm just saying that if his production keeps up, like his counting stats, his raw totals, if this keeps up, and look, we've been talking about the shooting percentage all season long. I'm done talking about it. I know it's probably going to come down, but it hasn't yet. And I used it as a reason of, they should trade him while his value is high. It's not coming down. It hasn't come down. I don't see anything in his game that's showing me that, that's for sure going to come down. Like, it might come down a bit, sure, but he's also a high-value shooter. Like, he doesn't take shots from very low percentage areas. Look at Connor Garland, for example, not to pick on a player, but last night, how many shots did he just float on net? Yeah, your shooting percentage is going to be better when you score goals. Who would you rather have on your team? The guy who converts on more of his shots? And look, I know I'm making it sound like I don't understand how shooting percentage and analytics and all that works. I do. But I'm also saying when you watch him play, he's not taking many low percentage shots. Like, he's not shooting just from the blue line just to get a shot on net. He doesn't often shoot for rebounds. He doesn't often, he doesn't often shoot for rebounds. He's usually shooting to finish it off and shoot to score. That's what Kuzmenko does. Now, my point, Chris, is just that if this production keeps up, or even if it takes a slight step back, but he's still a consistent 30 goal scorer in the NHL, and he's making $5.5 million next year, absolutely his value is going to be sky high. If he does this over a season and a half, going into next year's trade deadline, and he has another year of team control at $5.5 million, I don't think there's a contender out there that isn't looking at paying a king's ransom to add him at next year's deadline.